Hello and welcome back. I am still with Kathy Francis, where we're going to talk and have a discussion on leadership, how we best practice leadership, and the need for leadership in emergency management, and promoting not only the profession but the professional as we move forward towards a more desired leadership capacity. So, Kathy, thank you so much for taking the time to join me in this discussion. It's one that I'm very passionate about. It's one that I feel is very, very important that we continue to give a voice to, especially as it relates to emergency management. And one of the reasons why is that, as you very well know, in emergency management, emergency managers don't necessarily sit in positions of actual authority. We have to influence and inspire people, and that happens through leadership and the fact that you ultimately have to build trust in doing so. So I appreciate your positions as various leadership positions that you've actually held, but also the leadership that you currently possess in promoting not only the organization which you represent, but the profession in general, and the desire to help serve the professional in your leadership capacity. So thank you so much for joining me in this discussion.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's really my pleasure to be here. Leadership is an important topic to me. And it's interesting, even though I am senior in my career and have a leadership experience behind me, just this spring, I attended a leadership course, and individuals ask me, "You're a great leader. Why are you here?" And it's because I care, because I fully understand that leadership progresses throughout our career. And it's time to reflect and pause about styles, approaches, and to be sure that I'm staying current in all of my aspects, because I truly care about how I serve, especially today, because I serve a 5-generational team. And it's my pleasure to really talk to you about that. And we're going to think about surviving leadership. What is it really like to lead in today's environment with 5 generations or more, which we just leverage support from so many different areas. And thank you for inviting me on today.
Absolutely, and that is very. I really appreciate you bringing that up, the 5-generation aspect of things. This actually the first time it's been brought up, and I think it's very important. One that we need to. I want to go down this road because it is a really big learning curve when you have so many different generations, and the way that you interact and communicate and give ultimately praise to or discipline to is all has to be in a way that isn't detrimental to the individual in which you are working through. So that is a big part. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you hear of course the millennials are the worst, so it's like, but then you hear if you think back and you look back, and they were saying the same thing about every generation. The parents said the same thing. Oh, this generation is the worst. And it's not, it's, of course, it's a perception thing, but ultimately, things have changed, and our environments changed, our access to technology, our access to pretty much everything is instantaneous. So we do have not only the generation we're dealing with that had access to that the whole time, we have the individuals that had kind of what they call the lucky ones that were blended. They didn't have it until about mid high school, and now they have it, and so they've had to learn. Then you have those who are of an older generation who are starting to embrace technology. So it's really a big thing about how we communicate with them, interact with them, and ultimately lead them through the process of doing things. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I lead the Mid-Atlantic Center for Emergency Management and Public Safety at Frederick Community College. And when I said a 5-generational team, what does that really mean? That means that there's a 50-year span between my youngest and my oldest individuals serving the center. And that means a 50-year span of knowledge, experiences, attitudes, behaviors, energy, and expectations. So we're not unique. Perhaps there are organizations, that are listening today that are just like our team. And then we've had, 2021 approach and all of the different aspects that we've had to deal with. with all of these blended attitudes and behaviors, how do we lead? How do we change our style to do that? So today I'm going to talk to you about our approach, and I'm going to narrow it just to three main areas. I could probably write a book about this, maybe you could too, but three main areas that I'll talk to you about today, and that's anchoring core values, developing an awareness of guiding leadership attributes, and then establishing a decision-making method and how it has helped our team and how this may help you as well.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's one of those things too that you know, the five over the you know, you got the five generations, and the blend of where the 50 years ago, you know, it wasn't popular to ultimately to show vulnerability. Mental health was widely looked down upon and considered weakness. The technology was extremely limited, and then today we have it where embracing mental illness is not a weakness, it's a strength. Showing vulnerability is encouraged, and technology is growing exponentially every day. So tell me how that applies to the application of the individual.
Okay, so the application. So understanding that leadership is really a lifelong commitment of service. And that just means not only means service to your community, your agency, but the individuals that you work with as well. So for those of us in emergency management and education also, we've made that commitment to serve others throughout our career. That often requires earning trust from those we lead, and trust from the public. It's not always easy to earn public trust, and sometimes that can be fragile. And one of the quotes that I like so much is from General Mark Walsh II. He's a US Air Force retired. And he reminds us, those of us in leadership, that leadership is a gift. It's a gift given to you by those who follow you. But you need to be worthy of their trust and their followership. So it's really with that mindset and knowing that we lead teams of individuals with all those energy, talents, experiences that are different, and to value those differences, very much value those differences. But equally so, it's important to acknowledge our commonalities. So when you lead a 5-generational team, understanding your commonalities as well as your differences is an important key aspect. And I've found that by focusing on core values, inspiring our team to develop, or maybe those who are experienced to revisit and nurture and protect their core values, because they serve as a foundation of how we build meaningful and purposeful lives. And certainly that's through our service in emergency management. So core values, when was the last time you really thought about your core values, those most important things to you as a person? So usually you can define those by just a few words that are indicative to where you might be in life or your leadership journey. And it's interesting because the wider the breadth of generations on your team or your community or your agency that you're serving, you'll have a pretty wide breadth of core values as well. You'll find people who say health, family, people and individuals, their purpose, their honor, or they may say nothing like that above. But it's important to acknowledge where they are and understand that their core values are their foundation. That's their home base of where they come to when they make decisions and when they serve you. You know, Maya Angelou wrote, she's a great author and poet, and I love her work. She wrote, "There is something gracious and grateful about serving." So when you lead and you serve individuals at various stages of their lives and their careers, it's challenging, but yet it's so rewarding. Because you as the leader, you provide that inspiration to your team and to those around you. You mentioned earlier, Dan, about all of the things that we've dealt with and as a result of the pandemic and our situation of a threat to public health and safety. So we are more focused maybe on nurturing ourselves than ever before. But you know, that's a management responsibility too, to make sure that we get to know our individuals, to get to know their needs, to make sure that we foster those positive behaviors and time for balance and boundaries within our lives.
Well, I think that's an important topic. With leadership in general, leadership is service, and service means that you care for those that you're in the service of, and you nurture them and you build them up. Uh, and you mentioned the building of trust in leadership, and ultimately, I tell people this all the time, is that leadership is influence. Influence comes from trust, and trust comes over time. A lot of that comes from consistency, to know that you're not faking, you're not putting on show, you're not posing as someone who cares. You really care about those that are in your service, and that you serve on a constant basis. And having said, you got 5 generations, and so that's not only 5 different generations that you have to lead in a different capacity, but that's also 5 different generations in which you have to inspire them to develop their own style of leadership. So tell us a little bit about that and how that benefits from the leadership and the emergency management and applying that in 5 generations.
Indeed. And many times we're so focused on the tasks that we have to perform, all those functions, solving the problem. Yet, as emergency management community, we are really built upon relationships. So those core values I talked about, understanding and encouraging that development of core values really builds connection. That's that information that starts to provide the synergy between your team members, between your community. And that servant leadership approach, reminds us that building those relationships is at the core of shaping our human and nurturing our lives. And that's a really important relationship that helps them understand why they're here, why they're valued. And it's one of the things that is so noticeable to a new hire, to someone who interviews with your team, to someone who comes on board as a contractor or a student. They quickly understand how healthy the team is. Do you have that synergy? Are you supporting one another? And it's just such an important aspect. So regardless of where you are in that career progression, anchoring those personal and professional lives in your core values is a really great place to start. And then we shift to leadership attributes, and there are so many. You could pull many, many out, and just to narrow the focus just a little bit for a generational approach that we're talking about today, I'm going to talk about integrity, courage, teamwork, and authenticity. So they may surprise you of the attributes of the many that I pulled out, those 4. But integrity, it's really modeling that internal and external integrity factors, doing the right thing and appearing to do the right thing. So like core values, integrity is another principle that needs to be understood. It needs to be nurtured and protected as you lead. So you model and foster integrity in this multi-generational team, and that requires that you act and communicate with great intention. And you consider both the internal and the external factors before you take action. So let's look a little bit about the internal integrity links to an individual's core values. That's often thought of as honor in leadership. And how about the external factors? Those are the factors that really guide your work and how you interact with your team and others. Think actions and image. So am I acting consistently throughout my leadership? Do I walk the walk and talk the talk? So it's not just taking those prudent actions, but really valuing how others view you as the leader, doing the right thing for the right reason, and ensuring understanding of the actions that preserve your integrity. So as a leader, when we focus on integrity, in the impression, that's really an important thing because it leads to transparency. Transparency and honesty, different but related, certainly to integrity. Sometimes transparency in our actions, can differ, and the expectations can differ. It's really being sure that you remove confusion, you remove fear and insecurity among your team, and to make sure that you're honest in all of your actions and include your team. And then I'd like to talk to you a little bit about courage. And you're probably thinking, why is courage here when we're talking about leading a team? But leadership and workplace courage can be developed. You can develop courage and leadership through your lifelong learning, through networking, through building and maintaining your competence and your confidence, as you progress throughout through your field and career. So I'll have to tell you that leadership takes courage from the very first day of your career to the last. Every day a leader shows up at work, you put yourself out there, your knowledge, your ideas and your credibility and your contributions. You put it out there into the world. And how people receive that talent and expertise will vary moment by moment, sometimes day to day, year to year. So if you are true to your core values and those and the mission of your team, you can anchor yourself. I'm sure we've all seen those sterling careers that end based upon the last questionable decision. You certainly don't want that, but you want to really, link your career to your solid values and actions, because courage to navigate through change, to lead people through change, can be quite challenging. When we talk about change, when you lead a generational team, leading them through change also is an important aspect. Building their confidence is an important as much as it is for your own. Think about leading someone, a brand new person in the past 2 years who may have come on board remotely, who's trying to build their career, trying to network when they can only meet virtually. How do you do that? That takes courage to show up, to really build your confidence when you're doing it in a remote environment. And maybe you don't have a full blend of leadership day to day, but you're learning to function on your own. Also think of that individual who's been in the career 40 plus years. How do you maintain skills in a world that changes at the blink of an eye? So that's very important for you as the leader to recognize those differences, recognize the commonalities, and to be sure you're providing that great support to all of the individuals in which you lead. And when I think about that, it comes to teamwork, still in our leadership attributes. It's really establishing that team culture that involves the individuals early at the creation of new initiatives and continually throughout the day-to-day functions. One person can only achieve a certain level of greatness, but when you bring the team together, you can amplify the work of individuals, of our partners, and of our groups of people beyond what you've imagined. So when we lead with great intention and we focus on those connections, the core values and the participation, it's very important. As a leader, you're going to set that direction. You'll link your work to the broader industry goals, to the broader organizational goals, and to communicate that with others. That teamwork really empowers each person as they come together. Often, when you lead a generational team and you involve your team members, you will get so many different perspectives and innovative ideas that you may never have thought of in the past. And because the span is so wide, you really have a wealth of opportunity right on your own team. So tap into that. Sometimes your team members, especially when they're working with different generations, you will have those that are more introverted and those that are more extroverted. For those that you need to bring out that talent a little bit, I found that the best way is often through inquiry. Asking simple questions that will build their confidence and connect that new person to the team, such as what are you reading? What are you researching? How could your skills and talent and knowledge support the project that we're working on? Sometimes I ask, how does this project relate to your work? And sometimes I simply ask, so what pitfalls do you see? Where do you see the problems? Help me figure that part out. And then many times I'll just say, what aspects of this project are you stuck on? What barriers can I remove for you? And really involving your full team members. I found that quite beneficial. And then the last thing in this segment is authenticity. To lead authentically. And when you say lead authentically, you may not realize that is your thought, your action, your adherence to your core values. Say what you mean and mean what you say. So if we ensure that authenticity in our actions, it really helps to build not only trust within the team, but within the organization and the image of the organization. So regardless of if you have 2 generations that you're leading or 5 that I'm leading, it's really important that we're genuine in the workplace and that we build that experience for each individual, that we act consistently and confidently, and that we remove bias and that we remove barriers. We acknowledge our differences and certainly acknowledge our commonalities. So that's one of the very important things. And the last thing I'll talk to you about is about the decision-making process.
Okay, well, I just want to touch on a couple of things that I really found value in what you just said, and ultimately you spoke about intention and purpose and action and consistency, but courage is a big one, and I really liked that addition. A lot of that, with courage, people think, well, you're just not, you don't show, you're not fearful. Well, that's 100%, wrong. Courage is acting in the face of fear. You may be fearful or anxious or reluctant, but you do it anyway, and you do it because it's needed, and it's being of service to someone else. But I want to really bring to your to kind of add to a little bit of what you said is the level of consistency comes with an intentional effort. You got to actively engage, and leadership is a skill. It's a skill that can be honed, or it can be lost. And the more you practice leadership, the better you get. And as long as you're doing it right, with the right mindset, meaning you're trying to be of service to someone else and build others up, there's gonna be times where you fail. There's gonna be times where it doesn't go as well as you planned it to. But as long as you continually and consistently bring that effort and engagement in the process, and with the intent and the right heart of being of service to someone else, you can't really go wrong when it comes to building others up. And I really appreciate that what you brought there and the information you provided the audience. But the categories in which you chose were spot on. I mean, and there's so many different categories you can choose from, and they all apply at some level. But the courage one is big, because not every leader, as you said, and I want to touch on this as well, is an extrovert. Myself, I'm more introverted, and I step into an extroverted role when I need to lead or perform in a certain way. And emergency management is not an extroverted field. We have a lot of extroverts that are working in the field and actually doing it, but they have to step into an extroverted role, and I refer to it as being omniverted, because you may be an introvert, but when you need to, you step into extroverted roles and capacities, and you're omniverted. You can switch back and forth between the two, but emergency management is not an introverted field, and you will have to step outside of your comfort zone to actively engage with the people you're serving, whether that be a jurisdiction, an organization, or a specific community. You have to engage them actively.
Well, thank you so much. And that leads to the last segment of what I want to share with you today, and that's the decision-making process. So there's no doubt, as a leader, the decisions that you are making are more complex than ever before. But there are some consistencies that we can focus on, and that's the process. Making sure that we can make clear, well-informed, and timely actions. So there's no doubt that the speed of information and disinformation and expectations of immediacy can really challenge even the most experienced leader. So to be decisive and have that situational awareness and the accurate and quick processing of information, it really takes time to hone your skills, just like you said, Dan. It really is a process that you will continue to work on throughout your career. When we think about some of the things to consider when you're making a decision today, it's technology, social relationships. It may be the economic environment, maybe the ethical and legal environment. And it certainly is, when we think about the political environment, internal and external, it all has a factor in some of the decisions that we make. So whatever process you choose, and you may toggle back and forth given different situations, it's just really important that you do have a process, that you test your process, that you adapt it, and that you practice it. So while you grow in your leadership, it's also important that you communicate your decision-making process to your team, regardless of the method that you choose. Help them understand how you're thinking, how you collect information, how you synthesize it, and then how you will share information and then monitor that impact. So if you help them understand how you assess, how you reassess different points, and then how you develop contingency planning, you've established yourself and your team for success. And don't forget the value of those team members, the value of their thoughts, how they collect data and their opinions too. Because those generational differences that I've spoken about, they're the ones that will uncover the pitfalls, and they're the ones that will develop those innovative solutions that we all need. So in conclusion, I encourage you to really embrace leadership, just like Dan said, as a lifelong process. Today, you'll find yourself leading a multi-generational team, and that requires service. That requires service to every single individual on your team, to your agency, and certainly to the communities that we all serve. That requires you to improve your communication and your skills of inclusion too. And remember that service freely given to others will allow them to find success within themselves. And that's what we're all about in emergency management and in education. Finding and helping other people to hone their own success at every point along their career continuum. So time is the currency of leadership. Spend your time wisely. Thank you for asking me to participate today, Dan.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Kathy, for your time. You know, I tell everybody your time is your most valuable resource, and I truly do appreciate you giving me some and the audience that will be partaking in these videos and audio listening. So thank you so much for taking the time. The presentation was amazing. The insight and that you brought to the discussion was fantastic, and I truly find that beneficial.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you, and continue your good service.
I appreciate it. So I'm going to let you just let everybody know where they can find you if anybody wanted to reach out or connect with you.
Thank you, Dan. You can find me at Frederick Community College, Mid-Atlantic Center for Emergency Management and Public Safety. We will share the website at the end of this presentation. And you may also find me on LinkedIn. I'm readily accessible, Kathy Francis. And I will just know that if you reach out to me, I will be more than happy to talk with you. Thank you again.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. For all those who are watching, listening, thank you so much for taking the time to go down this road with us and experience this conversation and discussion. If you found value here, please share it. Reach out to us, DM me, like, comment, share on to let us know your insights and ultimately if there's anything that we can continue to bring to you to better not only the profession, but you as the professional. I'm Dan Scott. Let's get better and let's do it together.